Hey, hey, everybody. Welcome to March 7, 2023. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We are having a great day now that we're here talking mules and donkeys. My name's Dave, and this is Steve Edwards, and that's what we do is talk about mules and donkeys here on the Ask Steve Mule questions, asked and answered. If this is the first time you're ever hanging out with us, we want to say thank you for spending time with us. We're so glad that you're here. It is good to have you. The way this works is very, very simple. Number one, we ask that you share your name, where you're watching from, and what the weather is like. That way we get to know you, you get to know us. It's a good exchange, a good communication. Second thing that we ask is that you go ahead and share any and every mule or donkey question that you've got. Last thing we want is for you to spend, 45, 50, 60 minutes with us here and not ask your question and then have an entire week feeling like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Hey, you're here. We'll give you the information. You get out there, give it a try, and see if it works for you. The third thing, and folks are really great about this, is that you share the broadcast out on Facebook or YouTube. If you're on YouTube, it's very simple. You click like, subscribe, the notifications on, and then click like on the video. And if you're on Facebook, all you got to do is tag a friend or family member or click the share button. It's that simple. Steve, it's been 7 days. It feels like it's been 7 minutes. How have you been since last week?
Well, then I was just telling you, I don't know when I had time to work. I was supposed to be, quote, retired. Yep. Uh-huh. Well, I've just pulled my windshield washers wasn't working on my 2020 Dodge. And so I'm tracking it all down and finally figured, all right, it's the pump. So the auto body man of me went in there and pulled the wheelhouse out and went in there and got the washer bottle and replaced the pump. It's all working now. I can actually still turn a wrench. Wow.
There we go. You guys would be surprised at all the things that Mr. Steve Edwards knows how to do. He's a humble man, and every time I go out there, I learn one new thing that he knows how to do, and I pretty much think that's the way it's going to be from here until all of the days on this earth. So it's fun to get together and talk about mules and donkeys, because that is one thing Mr. Steve has learned one or two things about. So ask the right one or two questions and you'll get the right one or two answers. No, that's not true. Ask anything you got. And if you watch this show regularly, you know that Steve will say, well, I've never had that question before. I'm not sure what the answer is. Or, you know what? I don't know much about that. I've never tried that. Why don't you do it and then come back and let me know? And that's really how Steve has gathered all of the information that he has over the course of the last 40 plus years. And of course, he's been cowboying longer than that. But everything began with Jasper back in like 1982 around there. Or Jasper or Casper?
Casper.
There we go. I was watching a show and there was a character in there named Jasper. So I've got show on the brain. Casper, all those years ago. Steve, we've got Tamara watching from Queensland, Australia. That means we have gone international right off the bat. Mr. Dave O'Brien is watching from East Texas, 80 degrees and very humid. Barbara is watching from cloudy Missouri. Laura is watching. Happy Tuesday, y'all. 49 and cloudy in beautiful Missouri, America. Sherman Johnson, Norman, Oklahoma, 56 degrees with rain moving in. Pamela Richards is watching from Whetstone, Arizona, beautiful and sunny. Tamara's got our first question of the day. What age do you start introducing tack to your mule? Like lunge roller, bridle, long reins, not riding them, but starting pre-riding training. Steve, what would you say there?
Usually they're in pretty good bone and pretty good condition when they're about a year old, about, 12, 16 months there, and they're pretty good. My first tack after the come along hitch is always a surcingle. So I usually put a surcingle on. Here's the thing, folks. One of the reasons that they jump around or even go to bucking when you're saddling up is they're not used to that strap being around their belly and making them uncomfortable. That cinch and that breast collar, and all of a sudden they go like this, you see. So I like to take ropes. My first tack is ropes over them, a burlap bag over them, a plastic bag over them. Not that I'm desensitizing them. They're getting used to different noises and smells. But guess what? Instead of doing like I used to do, jack up a back leg, or how I used to do, hobble them all the way around, I now put the come along hitch on them. And even if a bear is trying to swallow them, they'll still stand still because the come along hitch bumps their nose. And when I bump their nose, I'm about. So I usually will introduce a bit right off the bat. Usually we'll always, when I say right off the bat, by 6 months old, I've pretty much had the majority of things on them in the very beginning. About a year and a half, saddle, breech, and breast collars, everything. When I saddle one up, I always have everything on them. Breech and breast collars, front and rear cinches, everything. I had a email the other day, and of course I'm always asking people, send me pictures, I'll be happy to help you out. They sent me a picture. You can always tell horse folks with a lot of different things, you know. Sent me a picture of their colt with the saddle on and said, how does this look? They had the front cinch only tightened up. No breeching, no breast collar, no rear cinch on them. And folks, that doesn't make the saddle fit correctly. You got to have everything on there. Breeching, breast collars, rear cinch, everything in order to basically set that saddle up. And the most important cinch is the back cinch. Okay, no reason to tighten up that front cinch. You can see that front cinch on this colt tightened up and the back of the saddle sticking up like this, like it's a stink bug. Folks, back cinch first, front cinch second, back cinch snug, front cinch within about a half an inch of being up against the belly. Walk them around a step or two, come back, tighten them up again. But my first tack is always my come along rope.
Everything starts with that come along rope. If you do not have the ground foundation starting kit, that's what you want, and you can get that on the website. We really don't tell folks, hey, you need to buy this, you need to buy this. We give you the information and we encourage you what's worked for us. That's up to you. But when it comes to your safety, when it comes to getting you off on the right hoof, the right foot, we say the ground foundation starting kit is the place to start. I'll put a link in the comment section here in a second. Next question. This one came in from Tina. Tina sent in a message, said, Steve, I have watched your videos off and on for quite a while now, and I'm wanting to purchase a Mammoth Jenny. My question is simply, do you ever have a Mammoth Jenny on your property that's for sale? If not, does someone else have a Mammoth Jenny for sale? I prefer a Jenny that has not been trained yet. Do you have any thoughts on this? So I'll say, Tina, Steve is not in the buying and the selling business. Of course, over the years, he's had one here or had one there. But today, there's nothing on the ranch. You go over there right now. Steve is retired, which means he's like always busy, always doing stuff, more so than he was the first 50, 60 plus years of his life. So time for a mule or a donkey, well, just not really the thing that's happening right now. But we do constantly look at pictures of what folks will send in, and we'll tell you what we see. Occasionally, we may catch wind of somebody who's got a good animal that Steve knows. But other than that, we won't make recommendations because Steve doesn't know the animal. Now, Steve, with that said, she's looking at a Jenny. She's wanting a Mammoth Jenny that has not yet been trained. Do you have any thoughts for Tina related to what she's going after?
Oh yeah, Tina, I think, you know, if you got the confidence to start a 2-year-old, get in there and get it done. That is right time. It is a time they should be training. One of the things about me, folks, when it comes down to animals and, you know, go over here and buy this one or go over here and buy that one, I don't do that. I haven't seen you ride, and I haven't seen the animal being ridden. And when I say ridden, I'm not saying walking down a sidewalk. I'm not saying going up a road. I'm not saying going up a trail. I'm not saying crossing a river. All having a 10-year-old kid on their back, which is another ridiculous thing. But anyway, I don't do that. What I go look for is this. What I look for, ready? Da da da, is disposition first. And then I watch the animal side pass, turn on the forehand, turn on the hindquarters, yada, yada, yada. Then I get an idea. But you got a 2-year-old, It's easy to do anything with. Donkeys are super, super, super smart. And about the time that most of my clients think they didn't get it, the next day the donkey will show them how to do it. They're great animals. So congratulations. Go find a 2-year-old. I don't know why you want to go mammoth. You can go standard. Kind of depends on your height, really. The thing about mammoths is they are a little more coarser in the bone, and something like that to think about. But hey, a Jenny or a Jack will both be good. Now, when I say Jack, they're called Jacks and Jennies. But if they are intact, where they're able to breed, then they're a standing Jack. So there you go. Have fun.
Awesome. Next question comes in from Leslie. She says, is there a Shank bit I could go to when working cows to get a quicker stopping response and also use for general riding? My mule is doing well on the double twisted bit you sent me, but I was wondering if you would recommend some other bit. I've spent a lot of time on this mule and he is doing well. Thanks, Len.
Okay, Lim. I've left her a couple phone messages, but we haven't been able to connect. So here's the deal. It's when I'm first working cattle on my mules for the first time, and they know, or any type of first time, but let's just say cattle. I want my mule riders martingale. Okay, I can get a better stop. I can get better turns and everything with that martingale on a one that I'm training than I can with my uh, trail riding bit. Here's the thing: when you're working cattle and you're in an alleyway or you're in a bigger arena area, there are times that I want to be one-handed because I'm roping. There are times I need to be two-handed because my mule's not paying attention and I need to give it directions. So get this in your mind, folks. Anytime you have something new, going to a new trailhead, going to a new campground, you're going to go hunting, out comes the mule rider's martingale. My first few hours is with the martingale because I have control. Folks, just because they're trained don't mean they're going to stay that way, because all of a sudden something's going to catch their mind, something's going to catch them off guard, and you ain't going to stop them because of this. This is what happens. The mule sticks his nose out, throws his head in the air, and he's got you. Period. With the martingale, he can't do that. So when they're in that first few hours of working cattle or going to a new campground and you're first doing your rides, you have more control with the mule rider's martingale than you do with anything. Anytime I went to any of the foreign countries, I always took my martingale with me. Always. Number one. I did take my finished bit if I happened to find one that worked 80% off my legs. And you know what? When you go overseas, you're not going to find that. So going back to your deal, call me when you get a chance. I'll go to you with more detail, for sure. But you got to remember, folks, that when you are riding one-handed, you're going to run 80% off your legs. 80%. When you're running two-handed, that's a direct rein, then you're almost going to be like a 60-40. 60% on your hands and 40% on your legs as you progress. But there you go, Dave. Maybe she'll give me a call sometime.
Awesome. Fantastic. Let's hop over and see who else is hanging out with us today. Okay. Folks, I see you all are here. I'll get to you here. Jim is watching from Western Maryland, where it's 28 degrees and clear. Lane is watching from overcast skies at 37 degrees in Spring River, Oregon. Question from Lane. What's the best way to teach my young mule to respect an electric fence without running through the fence? So there's an old Jeff Foxworthy bit. He says, I remember when I was a kid, my dad let me do anything. He'd say, oh, you want to stick a penny in the light socket? Go ahead. Oh, it hurt like hell, didn't it? Don't do that no more. I don't know so Lane's trying to avoid the don't do that no more strategy. What would you say to Lane?
Forget it. You're riding a mule. You're always going to have mores than you do don't. Yes, sirree, folks. About time you think you've got it all figured out, something else comes up. Okay, number one, Lane. I I think you're using the electric fence for when you go out. I don't know. You tell me when you go camping. A lot of people do that. I don't. I've had many a bear come into camp. An electric fence means nothing to a mule who says, "There's a bear. I'm going the other way." Yeah, yeah. I've also had. It reminds me, it was up in Yosemite one time. We was packing freight up there, and we stayed in one of the line cabins, and we kept seeing this sow and had three cubs up there in Yosemite. And we were sitting out having lunch our dinner one day outside this one cabin. Looked across, and it goes this sow and three cubs, and there's a wire fence all the way around this pasture area. And those mules actually stuck their nose over, and in some cases even touched those bears with their nose. They were that close. And Mama Bear never paid attention to them, went on through. But let's go on back. When it comes to electric fence, you can, if you're going to put it around your corrals to keep them from jumping out, they'll do it. I tell you what, that'll work. My old mule Katie, she used to go up with her whisker on the end of her nose and just kind of touch it a little bit, the whisker, and if it sparked, she knew not to go no closer. I've seen that a couple different times. Pretty smart, but there's no real way other than put them into a small area to start out. Now, are you doing it for camping, or are you doing it to keep them from cribbing, or you doing it to keep them from jumping out? Let me know, Lane.
Next question. This one came in from Zach. Now, Zach's asking a question about a different saddle, and so we don't shy away from talking about other things. We want to make sure that you got the information you need. He says, we're getting a new mule this week. We currently have horses, but I did have a mule when I was a kid. I know you have some nice saddles, and I plan on buying the supporting tack from you, but we already have a couple HR saddlery dealers here in Iowa, and they have some nice looking mule saddles. My wife would like to sit in a saddle before we buy. My question is, are other mule saddles, such as the HR, okay? Also, will your tack and pads work fine with other saddles? Thank you. So, Steve, we've had this question before. What do you say to folks who are asking similar questions like Zach?
Well, Zach, I know people like to touch them and smell them and sit on them and this sort of thing. And yes, folks, my breech and breast collar and saddle pad will all work underneath that. But here's the thing, folks. Just because it says mule doesn't mean that it's going to fit like it should. Here's a good thing to think about. If it's truly a mule saddle, write this down, Zach. If it's truly a mule saddle, the back of the saddle is not going to be sewed in. So there's both skirtings like this, and they're going to be open right here. Going to be open. If they are sewed together, it's going to rub the back of your mule. That's number one. If it's a mule saddle, it's going to have 4 tie straps all the way around. If it's a horse saddle trying to be a mule saddle, they've got a billet on the right front, a billet on the right rear, and a billet on the left rear. That's horse. That is not mule. Okay. Next thing, I get a kick out of folks that want to sit in a saddle before they ride it. Well, that's the problem, because industrial standards, every single saddle out there is basically made the same way. Made the same way. The skirting, everything like that. And when it comes down to the difference with mine, the difference with mine is the tree. My tree is not. See how it's open back in the back there? That's the way it should look. My tree is only my tree. I don't even call it a mule tree. It's only my tree. Just because they call it a mule tree don't mean nothing. Next thing, I want you to look at my rigging plates. That's where the tie straps in the front, tie straps in the rear. Notice how my skirting is rounded. That's to keep from impeding the pressure on the hip bone. Notice in the back of the skirt where there's a D-ring up there where breeching attaches. Notice how the back of the skirt comes up, kind of like a ducktail. Why is that? So that it doesn't put pressure on the hip. Right there. You see how the back of the saddle comes up? It doesn't come down flat. That's to keep from rubbing on the spine. Okay? So that's really important. Next part is rigging plates. So if we go down, we look at that as a rigging plate, rear rigging plate. That rigging plate is the most important part of the saddle because it is at just the right place on the mule's belly, not to get up into the groin and not to let the saddle go forward. So my rigging plates are a different measurement than these other so-called mule saddles. All right. Now, let's go back. I'll just tell you the story of Montana. Here we are in Montana, and we're talking about saddles, and I'm taking my tree and I'm putting on all the different mules that are there. I take the horse tree and I put it in all the different mules that are there, and I'm telling them this is what the horse tree looks like, and when you have my saddle and my tree, this is what the bar looks like. Folks, just because they call it mule don't mean it's going to work on your mule. Now let's go back. On a bar, that's the part that sets on the mule's back, okay? On the bar, I want out of a 19-inch, 19.5-inch long bar. Get this, 19.5-inch long bar. I only want 15.5 inches working on that back. The front of the saddle, I don't want this first 4 inches to be touching in that area. Right there is the D-ring. And like I was telling you about earlier, somebody sent me a picture of a colt all saddled up, but they only have 1 cinch on, the front cinch. That is not the important cinch. That back cinch is, okay? And so out of a 19-inch bar, I want 15 inches actually touching the mule's back. I do not want to be touching the front at all because that's the scapula area. That's where it moves around a lot, okay? And that's what we don't want to impede. Now, so going back to this now, we're sitting around and we're talking about saddles. And then this lady comes up, and I had about 6 of my saddles out here on saddle stands. And she says, I want to sit in the saddle and make sure I'm going to be comfortable. I said, sure, sit down, have a seat. So she picks the saddle out and she sits down on this end, and she's moving around, moving her little hiney around, trying to figure out if things are going to work and fit and this sort of thing. And I'm talking and answering questions to my other clients. Finally, I go over to her and I say, ma'am, how's that saddle fit to you? She goes, I don't think this saddle's going to work for me at all. I said, oh, well, that's too bad. Well, come down here, about 4 or 5 saddles. I said, come on down here and sit in this saddle and tell me what you think. And she's sitting in the saddle and moving a little hiney all around, trying to figure out things. And I'm answering customers or clients' questions. And finally, I come back over to her and I says, ma'am, how's that saddle fit? Oh, man, I like this saddle. Just right. This is the kind of saddle I want right here. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, that saddle is the same as the first one you sat on. The difference is the saddle stand that the first one you were sitting on is wider. So she was a pretty small frame lady. So she was kind of split apart with her legs. And now the other saddle that she was sitting in was a more narrower tree, and that fit her more. That fit her better. Now that I've said that, I have a video that I send with everybody on these saddles because it is so important that you prepare the saddle to fit you. I know the saddle's going to fit your mule and donkey. That I have no problem with, okay? But here's the problem. Some of you sit too far forward in the saddle, too far back. Some of you are like me, where you've had hip replaced or hip or knee problems, so you're setting to one side or another. So in other words, your equitation, or how you present yourself to the saddle and then to the mule, depends a lot on how you're setting in the saddle. Now, Leather has to be wet in order to shape it to the pattern that you want. So you wet it, you shape it. Once it's shaped, then you glue it and you put it down. Now, in order for this saddle to fit you, the person, because you set a saddle different than somebody else, everybody sets saddles different. I've judged hundreds of mule shows over the years and lots of people, and I can tell you there's things that I look for as a judge. So let's go back. When you wet the fenders and when you wet underneath the skirting, I use a soapy water in a spray bottle. And when you wet all of that, now you can shape the fenders to you. You can shape them to your individual set. Now, so I wet all the back of the fenders underneath the skirt. I twist them. I put a broomstick through them, and I let them sit overnight. Next morning, I unravel it. I wet it again. I wet like an old wet newspaper, and then I go ride. I go ride, ride, ride. Now, I may go riding 5 or 6 months before I think about oiling. But here's the thing. Once you oil a saddle, it is almost impossible to shape it. All these saddles that are built are all made to industrial standards, especially the ones that are made with like mine. Mine are all, I have clickers. I push a button, it cuts out every single piece of leather. Then it's a matter of hand sewing it together. Pretty simple to do. Your average saddle guy cannot afford those, so they cut out each piece of leather by hand. Each piece of leather by hand. Okay? Now, doesn't make my saddles any worse or their saddles any worse. It's just that I can make more saddles and do a quality job on them with those clickers. Now let's go back. That piece of leather is flat and will be flat until you wet it and shape it. So you have to wet it and go ride, wet it and go ride, wet it and go ride. You may go 5 or 6 months or a year before you put any oil to it. One day you say to yourself, this is just the way I like it, right here like this. Okay? That's what it is. Now, once you do that, you let it dry, and then you oil it. You'll see this in the video. Now, here's the next thing. Look at all those saddles out there. People are setting them. Where do you see? The stirrup is setting flat. Instead of setting at an angle that you can slide your feet in, people lean over and they get their foot in the stirrup. Guess what? You just put yourself in a vulnerable position. Because when you go out of balance, you go down to put your foot in the stirrup. You do that. Now you're off balance, and now what's going to happen? All of a sudden, if your mule moved, or if another mule looked at their mule wrong and your mule decided to move, then you fall off because you are off balance. Set your stirrups so that you put your left one in, throw your right leg over, put your right one in, lock yourself into place. Lock and load. Okay? So there it is. Every saddle, Dave, every saddle, okay, must be wet and ridden. And I tell you to do this simply because of all the years of experience that I've been doing. My first new saddle was a Larry Mahan Bighorn. I bought at Penny's for $185. Yeah, that was 50 some years ago, back when I didn't know what $185 looked like. But I made payments anyway. The old cowboy buddy of mine, Bill Doherty, took my saddle off my horse to look at it. He threw it in a horse trough. He says, you got to shape the saddle to you. Your horse, the tree fits it. The rest of the skirting, and that's where you folks, this is where it goes wrong. People look at skirting thinking, oh, it don't fit. When you look at my saddle, the back of the saddle sticks up. I don't want it to lay against the animal. But just take a look at those three things. Number one thing is the skirting in the back. Is it sewn together or is it open where the animal doesn't have to worry about ruining his spine? Second thing is 4 tie straps all the way around. If there's only 3, you've got a horse saddle, you don't have a mule saddle. Okay? So anyway, there you go. Go to my website, Dave. Have them go to my website give them the video mastering the saddle fit.
Yep.
Right there, they'll see me fitting everything from a Percheron mule to a Welsh pony mule.
Got it. On it. Thank you for the question. Steve, we had a message come in earlier this week. You see this right here? Marcia sent in a message.
Hey, Marcia and her fine little red mule.
I
Oh, look
love
at that
seeing that.
fine t-shirt she's got. Woo!
That's a fantastic t-shirt. Y'all, we've got the Queen Valley Mule Ranch t-shirt and the Queen Valley Mule Ranch trucker hats. Both of them are available right now. I'm going to put a link in the comments section. Get the shirt or hat right there. Go ahead, check it out. You can get yourself a shirt or a hat. They're fantastic. We've had a lot of fun, folks sending in their pictures and being able to share those. We also had a great video come in from David O'Brien. Now, you may have seen this already, Steve, but I want to go ahead and show it to you here. So David O'Brien sent this in, and he sent a message here. He said, Steve, it was a smooth transition from the halter with baling twine to your martingale. She was busy playing with it. Thanks for all you do. Dave O'Brien. How cool is that?
Cool, cool. Now notice how the mule is kind of asking questions about this bit, throwing its head all around, looking all around, trying to figure out what? How can I be comfortable? Okay. So now if you had a regular bit on there, that mule could throw his nose up and take it away. Notice every time he threw his nose up, that mule rider's martingale bit him and made him stay in place. That's good. That's perfect. See, you're not on his back dealing with the mule. You're letting the mule learn. You hear that, folks? He's letting the mule learn. Can you imagine being on his back with him throwing his head? All he's doing is asking questions. What can I do to be comfortable here? Pretty soon, he gets it, and he gets soft. Head goes on the nose on the vertical. Looky there. Looky there. Isn't that pretty? Now, is he still gapping his mouth, messing around, throwing his head in the air? Yeah. But see, right there, he figured out, oh, no, that's better right there. Good job, Dave O'Brien. I'm proud of you.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, let's hop back over. Let's see. Where is our chat? We got a lot of people hanging out with us today. Okay. Hey, Richard Matthews. Good afternoon, Chaplain Steve and Chaplain Dave. Good afternoon, Captain. It's so good to have you here. Judy is watching. Just got on. 40 degrees and cloudy with wind, overcast in Gazelle, California, just south of Oregon. Thank you for the geography lesson there. I'm always learning new things. I appreciate it. They did not teach me that in the public school. Barbara is watching. I have not been on my mule since October. Been working with the come-along hitch, mule riders martingale, and surcingle. Put on the saddle and climbed on from the mounting block. She didn't move until I asked. We walked around the arena, back to the mounting block, and then she wouldn't move. What do I do in that situation? Other than that, it was great. So everything happened as it was supposed to. Did a walk around the arena, came back to the mountain block, but after that, wouldn't move at all. What do we have to say there, Steve?
Okay, what's the mountain block for? The mountain block is to stand still and quiet. She knows that, okay? When I'm first training one to go to mount at a block or at a picnic table or, any places like that, they are to stand there quiet and not to move. Good job. You've done good job. All right, now what do we do to move them off? Okay, here's what we do. Just like we do without the mounting block there, just like we would do when we first climb on. When I first climb on, this is what happens. I just sit there. Hands are quiet. I may talk to some of my friends if they're there, but otherwise I'm just kind of sitting there. Don't get on and then ride off. If you do, pretty soon you're going to try to get on while the mule is running. Not fun. So you teach them stand still and quiet. Now, once you do that, you're going to get a hold of the reins, and you're going to hold the left rein solid, and hopefully you're riding into my mule rider's martingale. And then you're going to bump the right hand. Bump, 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 bump. The mule drops his head. You make your hands quiet. You go back, bump, 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 bump. And I'm teaching the right brain to back up. So the mule thinks, okay, to get you to let go of me, all I have to do is drop my head like I did last time, but I'm still bumpy. Thinking, oh, wait a minute. Now, last time you let go. And then all of a sudden the mule moves back a little one step. I get quiet. Now I go back, bump, 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 bump. Now the mule's thinking, I drop my head, I move back one step, you're going to quit going bump, bump, bump. Well, no, she don't. She stops, she backs up a step, and then she stops. I go bump, 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 bump. She makes another step. I quit. Now I just trained the right-hand side, get this, to back up. Now I do the opposite with my left hand. My left hand is quiet. My right hand, bump, bump, bump. She drops her head. My right hand, bump, bump, bump. She drops her head, moves the shoulder. Bump, bump, bump. She drops her head, moves the shoulder, and then she moves another shoulder. We're done for the day. In other words, once I've hit 3 from my foundation, I just taught my mule how to back up on the right brain and on the left brain by bump, bump, bump. Now, why do I always start off in reverse? Because if I've got a good backup, I usually have a good whoa, a good stop. Okay, so that is one way I'll start one off. Now the other way is, and notice I'm not using any legs, no legs, too much information, too much pressure is what it amounts to, and you can get them to blow up pretty easy. Like I had a guy call me the other day. He hit him with both legs at one time. The mule bucked him off. No, don't do that, folks. Right, left. Right brain, left brain. Now, so what you do, no legs. You take your hands and you go direction. You're using the mule rider's martingale, okay? You go direction. See that? My hands are ice cream cone. Now I tip my ice cream cone out. That's the direction I'm going to go to the right. So direction, impulsion. My left hand stops at my horn, goes no farther. My right hand then is tied from the 2 reins coming across to each other like this. Now, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to wait. The mule's thinking, man, this is sure uncomfortable holding me over here like this. What am I going to do? And all of a sudden, the mule drops his head. Always key thing, folks, when a mule is getting it and understanding, dropping the head is the first thing because it loosens all 5 major neck muscles and the throat natch, and the mule is more relaxed. Relaxed. Hear that? Relaxed. Not all tense. Relaxed. So when she does that, I then come my hands back to center, and then I immediately go back direction, impulsion, and I wait again. Now the mule's thinking, all right, when I'm in that position, all I have to do is move to the right, and you'll let go of me. So I'm holding it. Notice I'm not using my legs. I'm not making the mule move. I'm not putting pressure on it other than just the bridle. So I'm teaching a neck rein here because my left rein is touching the neck. My right rein is away and giving direction. So now, once I have gone 1, 2, 3, the mule usually will walk right on off. Okay. When they do, I try to go in just small little quiet circles. And anytime if you're going to unload off of a ladder or something like that, they're always to stand there still and quiet until you give them the cue to move. Cue to move, back up. Foundation, bump, bump, bump. Finish, back up. One hand, pick up on the reins, back up. Turn off to the right, one hand. Legs are always quiet when you're building a foundation. As you progress, your ultimate goal is going to be 80% on your legs, 20% on your hands. You're going to use the spur like this. You're going to ask with your calf, tail with the side of your stirrup, demand with a spur. And you're not going to harpoon him. You're just going to give him a light touch. I am here. Now, there's nothing wrong with you getting down on the ground and asking with the palm of your hand, tail with a slap, and demand with a spur or use the end of your thumb because they'll feel that pressure. When you use the spur, use it quietly because they can take that back foot and knock that spur right out of your hands. Yep. Hey, Dave.
Awesome. Hey, next question we got. Frank sent this in over Facebook Messenger. And so I've got a message here from Frank. And here's what he says. He says, "Hey, Steve, you may not remember me, but I'm the guy that gave you a ride to the airport in Nashville, Tennessee, after the Mule and Bluegrass Festival. Anyways, I have a chance to buy this saddle, and I wanted you to look at it and make sure it looks right to you. I've never seen one this color with all the stamping and the rear rigging. Looks different. If you would text me back or call me, sure would appreciate it." So,
Yep.
Steve, what are we looking at here?
That is an old saddle, a very old saddle. It used to be called a canyon rider. We didn't make a lot of them, okay, uh, at all. Now, notice the skirting in the back. Point the skirting in the back between the two rings. Notice how the back of the saddle kind of comes up in a rafter style. It is not flat, comes up in a rafter style. Notice how in the middle that center part is apart. Now, somebody has added that piece of leather on the back there, but that's okay. Things like that happen all the time, you know. So you can see they sewed in a heavy piece of leather back there. So uh, as long as the back end is open like it is, that's fine. As long as it's still rafter shape, in other words, kind of pointy shape, that's fine. Okay. But yeah, that's a canyon rider, and if you can buy that, you know, and get it for a good price, by golly, get it. It looks like it's a pretty nice shape. Breech and breast collars all there. I can't tell. Come up on that second saddle from the left. Can you bring it up any closer? There we go. Can you move it back? Okay. Well, it looks like we're still in good shape. They've still got all the nylon latigo's, got the breech and breast collar and all. Good for you. That's hard to find, especially that saddle there. That's a canyon rider. That's probably 12 years old. Probably looks like it's in excellent condition.
That's a good find right there.
Yeah, good
That's an
for him.
excellent find. Well done, Frank. Well played, my lord. We salute you. Let's see here. Hopping back over onto today's show, we've
I'm
got.
almost come on coffee.
Well, I was just about to say, guess who's chiming in? Mr. Come Along Coffee by David himself, David Pengelly. I've always wondered why people find it necessary to stand up on the saddle when they are selling a mule. I would be thinking about horse flies, yellow jackets, just wondering.
You know, Dave, it's called showmanship. I have it shows the abilities of the rider, yeah, except for if the mule took off and the rider hit the ground and there's no helmet, that's another story. Getting up on top of the saddle and cracking the whip doesn't impress me. Either the mule got a really good disposition or he's under a lot of drugs. Could be both, yeah. But getting up there and cracking a whip, crawling between the legs, having a 10-year-old kid ride the mule, that's all stunts, show stunts to get you to think, oh man, look how well trained that mule is. No, it can do you a bit of good to get up on that saddle and crack a whip out there on the side of a mountain. Try doing that at the Grand Canyon. That's another story. No, folks, it's showmanship. And people that do not know that are going to buy mules for the first time, they see all that and they think, wow, that mule is well trained. No, that mule, they're finding some way to sell it so they can get more money out of it. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned. You want to impress me in a 10-foot circle? You've heard this before, folks. Side pass, turn on the forehand, turn on the hindquarters, back up, everything in a 10-foot circle. If the mule can do that on one hand, we can start looking at a mule that has a foundation. The problem is the training, folks, comes from you. And sometimes the training not always, sometimes the training can be problematic because people do things different than what should be done with the foundation. But that's another story. So nope, it's just dog and pony shows, Dave. It's all it is, dog and pony show.
Dog and Pony Show. Carol is watching. She's watching over on YouTube. She left a comment a few days ago. She says, Carol from Navarro County, Texas. I have 3 rescue donkeys, have had them for at least 12 years. They are skittish and act as though they are not trusting of anyone, as in being able to pet them. How do I get them to trust me and allow me to interact with them? I inherited them after my husband died in 2020. I do give them treats and am learning as I go as to what they need by way of feeding and hay. So, Carol, I'll say you're in the right place. Um, uh, Steve, she's got these and she wants to, what she wants is a good foundation. How would you say she can get there, Steve?
Okay, so folks, anytime you're working with a mule and you want to build a foundation, they each have to be in an individual stall. Which reminds me, David from Australia sent me some pictures of his colts. Did he send those to you by any chance?
Oh, sorry, I was talking back to Carol.
No
Um,
problem.
I I don't I don't think so. If you
Okay, I'm going
send
to
them
send it
to
to
me,
you
if
right
you've got
now.
them and you want to send them to me, I'll get them up online.
Yeah, I'm going to send them to you right now. Now, these are weanlings. This is in Australia. And Dave, I'm sending this to you right now. This is Dave in Australia. He has weanlings. He started a mule ranch there in Australia. Congratulations to Queensland, Australia, Dave and Di. Which, folks, by the way, Dave and Di will be at the Montana Mule Show. So if you want to shake hands with a genuine Australian mule man, you can do it. And I prefer the hugs with Di myself. I like a nice hug from Di. Anyway, so she's there, going to be there too. But anyway, I want you to see each one of these mules are in a separate stall, not all together, in a separate stall. Because of this, when you do it that way, each mule has to depend upon you, the herd leader. If they are all together, they don't need you. You're a predator. They're a prey animal. So they don't need you. They got their own, they got their buddies, they got their feed, their water. And so therefore, folks, you're going to get nowhere. You can give treats to the cows come home. There it is right there. This is in Queensland, Australia. It's set up very much like my ranch is here. Notice the weanlings in each one of the corrals. Dave's shooting these pictures there in Queensland. But you can see each one is in his individual stall. Each one. And by this, now I can train. Now I can feed them according to their needs. Each colt is going to need, each donkey colt, each mule colt is going to need a certain feed program. And you are able to do that when each one is in a separate stall. When they're in separate stalls, I can maintain their feed and water, and I can control their feed. So what am I telling you with the donkeys? You take and have each one of the donkeys in a separate stall. No more feeding by hand right now, because here's what's happened. You've done it for a lot of years, and they have learned just to kind of get themselves back and not trust you. You're a predator, so they got to be each in a stall, and then that's when you start learning and taking care of them. So congratulations, Dave and Di there in Queensland, Australia. You can see what nice corrals and stuff they got. That's pretty nice. So individual stalls, folks. That's you're going to hear me tell you to do that. Even if you're not training these colts, every mule should be in its own stall. Everyone.
Now she's trying to get these animals to trust her. So we
Right.
want them in their own stalls, but one of the things she's doing is she's giving them treats as a way of bribing them to get them to trust her. Do you have any thoughts on treats, Steve?
I have no problem with a treat to get one to trust me. Here's the problem. Here's the major problem is when we give a treat, we give it close to our body, and then pretty soon the mule or donkey is all over thrashing you and in your space. When you give a treat, give the treat toward their chest to where they have to back up and back away to get to it. That way they get out of your space. Now, again, giving them treats can end as soon as possible. I don't care about giving daily treats is not good. You're going to have a biter on your hands. We actually tried that at Phoenix Zoo. I had signs everywhere saying do not feed the animals. Pretty soon they started biting kids and this sort of thing. That's what happens, folks. It comes down to it. You may not think it's going to happen, but there's a day coming. You mark this day. When you're giving treats, you're going to get it. So, will I give a treat later on when I have them in separate corrals? Yes, until I get to where I can start putting a come along hitch on them and starting to put a handle on them. Then I go good.
Awesome. Very good. Let's hop back over, see who else is hanging out with us. Hey, speaking of, hello from Queensland. Hot and humid here today. It is worming day for all equine here. Guess who that is? That is Mr. David Scholl himself, taking us international. It is so good to have you here, Mr. Scholl. Tell Di we said hello. Marcia says it's windy and cold in Virginia. Did you get the t-shirt with myself and Jasper okay? I hate my phone. My daughter had to help me. We sure did, Marcia. There you go, right there. We are so grateful. Thank you for sending it in. It is so awesome to get to see you enjoying the shirt and enjoying Jasper. Appreciate that. Pamela says, Steve, you shared in the spring we should get our mules dental and wormed. My question is, do you give your mules equine shots? Do mules start drinking alcohol shots and you just like line them up and they start doing shots as they go along? Do you get your mules equine shots? What do you give them and how often? It's tequila twice every afternoon. Steve, what would you say there to...
No, Dave, that's the kind of... It means inoculation.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, my bad. Pamela, my bad. That's Steve's right. Corrected me. What would you say to Pamela?
All right. So definitely I give them Eastern, Western encephalitis, tetanus, and influenza shot. Okay. It's a 5-way, and that's what I give them. All of those are all in the same syringe. I use an 18 gauge needle, and I give the shot. Here's the shoulder here. I put my hand like this next to the shoulder, and I put all of my needles right there. So I put my hand against the shoulder. Now this is high up where the saddle is, against the scapula. And when I do that, I'm going to take, this is the scapula here, I'll put my hand next to it. I'm going to open up my hand, and there's where I give that shot. It's the perfect place. There's not much in the way of veins there and this sort of thing. And you can give a shot because you're at the shoulder area. It's the safest place to do anything is from the shoulder. Can they still jump ahead and kick you? Yes. But with the having the come along hitch on them, always come along hitch when you're giving your shots. That way you have control. And you can also use the twitch, which is a wonderful tool. But that's what I do, 18 gauge needle, and I do the 5-way.
All right, I'm putting a link in the comments section. Right here is the Ground Foundation starting kit, and this Ground Foundation starting kit comes with the come along rope, the problem mule instructional video, which you will want to watch, and a rope halter for when you get to that point in training, or should you need one here or there. But as far as training goes in the beginning, it is all come along rope all the time. That is your direct line of communication. It gives you more communication in the right moment for ground foundation training. Now, the other thing that I'm going to put a link in the comments section is the humane twitch. And the twitch is, it's funny, it says humane because the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, that looks so barbaric. But do not judge a book by its cover, my friends. People tried to do that with Jesus and they missed out on the Savior of the universe. So do not judge a book by its cover. When you watch the humane twitch being used, you will see that it does indeed relax the animal, and places that you need to touch that were off limits before are now touchable. You are able to administer medication. You are able to clean in particular areas. You are able to do what Steve is talking about. You're able to administer vaccinations and shots. So The Humane Twitch, I'm putting a link in the comment section. Do not judge a book by its cover. And if you've got questions about it, read up on it there. And then on our YouTube channel, there's also a couple videos showing Steve working the Humane Twitch. It's a wonderful tool, and I'm not the only one who had that reaction. Other folks had the same reaction, and they were proven wrong just like I was. So moving right along here, let's hop back over. I got to scroll back up. Polly is watching from Barnesville, Minnesota. Above and cold wind. Carl from North Idaho. Sun came out up to 36. See you in Superior. Me and my daughter and 2 mules. Awesome, Carl. That'll be great. Mr. O'Brien has a question. Unfortunately, I have to trim my mule's feet alone. When I work on the front, she leans on me. When I yank on the come-along rope, she stops for a few minutes, then turns her head and lays it on me. Then there is too much slack in the rope. One time I let her go all the way and she rolled over on the side. When I'm working on the back, she'll continuously put more weight on her leg. I found that poking her in the side with the hoof pick gets her attention, but is temporary. Is there a better way? Steve, what would you say here to Dave?
Well, it is tough, and especially when you're trying to trim and shoe and this sort of thing. But here's the thing, Dave, it's not important to trim the feet or to shoe until the animal learns to respect. So be ready, go in the mode of let him think that you're trimming and shoeing, and just as soon as he goes and puts his nose on you, make a big deal of it. Drop the foot, get a hold of that come along rope, and try to break their nose. In other words, create a big fuss. Hey, what are you doing leaning on me? Don't be doing that. Okay. And they will stop. Now, you ask your tail demand. So first you do it lightly, and then you add more, and then you add more. Okay. But once they learn to figure out a way to make you the third leg, they'll do it. Okay. Now, watch, I think, my video, How to Communicate. You'll see I'm teaching a mule to hold his foot up, and you'll see me using the come along hitch, and you'll see me touching the button on the breast collar. I mean on the scapula. Touch the button, tap it with my quirk, and they pick their foot up and they hold it. Teach them to be on 3 legs to start with. So there's some different ideas for you.
All right, hopping back over. Polly says, saw comments on a mule and donkey site. Uh-oh. People were saying the front cinch tightened first 100%. I commented back the cinch first on my mule saddle. No one questioned me or said I was crazy. Maybe they learned something from you through me. So what she's saying is often folks will say, okay, number one, you can ride a mule with just 1 cinch in the front. Sometimes they'll say, okay, 2 cinches, but you want them both tight. Steve, what do we say?
I'm saying I want my back cinch snug to start with, front cinch barely touching the bottom of the belly. Walk them around in a circle, little 10-foot circle, tighten up my back cinch again 1 more notch. Leave my front cinch alone. Walk them around in a circle. This is my 3rd time. I tighten up my back cinch to where I like it. I probably go up the next notch. Then and only then I take my front cinch and bring it up snug where it's touching the animal. I can just slide my hand in there. Just slide my hand. Now comes the next part. I've got my bench over to where I'm going to climb up on it. I'm going to step up on my benches. I'm going to climb on. When I go to get on, I'm going to shake that saddle horn to make that mule stand still and quiet. And when I shake it really good and get him to stand still and quiet, then I climb on. Okay?
Awesome. All right, next question here, or next comment. Lorraine is watching from sunny Canyon Country, California, where it's 58 degrees. Marcia says, tetanus and rabies is a must for my mules, and was with my horses too. Mark Williams is watching where it's 55. Let's see. Happy Pants is watching. Hello, Steve and David. This is Greg from Sierra Vista, formerly Grass Valley, Grass Valley, California. Hope the move was okay. Lane says, Steve, we use the electric fence for camping. So there you go,
Yeah.
back on what we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so going back, folks, my preference is no electric fence. My preference is take and hobble a back leg to a tree with about 40 foot of rope. Why the back leg? Because the back leg, the mule will always go to the very end of the rope. If you have it tied to a front leg or if you got it tied to a halter, you'll get a lot of rope burns. So what I usually do is hobble one leg out, the back leg, and then they graze. Now, if I want to turn them loose and graze out in a pasture area, I hobble the two front feet with hobbles. I leave the two front feet alone. I don't use hobbles on both feet for them to eat and to graze. Now, when you hobble on your front feet, that is to stand still and quiet only. It is not for grazing. For grazing, now dudes only do that. Backyard people only hobble the two front feet. When you see it done right, left front, right rear, and then they have to scoot. You hobble just the two front feet on your mule to kick them out. And I've been there. I've already done that years ago. When I got back to the truck, the mules were waiting for me. Yes, they can run 20 miles clear back to the truck with their front feet hobbled. Seen it, been there, done that. Okay. So when I hobble, left front, right rear, and then I tighten up the rope accordingly so that they can just snug walk around. Sorry, Dave, I got into overtime there. It's 4:02.
Oh, that's okay. Do you have a few minutes to see if we can get through the rest of these?
Here we go.
Okay. Let's see here. Jerry is watching from Fort Benton. Hoping spring is just around the corner so I can work more with my mules using all the information I learned at your clinic in Montana last fall. Awesome. Elizabeth says, Steve, I have an 18-month-old, possibly gaited Molly mule. What would you recommend starting her in?
Well, out comes the come along hitch, folks. Everything, come along hitch. Use that ground communication kit and get your ground communication squared away. Now, this ground communication kit, folks, is for both you and the mule. Get this in your mind, you and the mule, because here's what happens so many times is that we think that we're only training on the mule. Well, in all actuality, you're teaching yourself how to pick up on that lead rope to get just a little bit, how to pick up on it to get a little bit plus a little bit more. Every time you pick up on that lead rope, you're communicating. So going back, where would I start? Ground communication. From there into the surcingle and adjusted rope halter. From the surcingle into the mule rider's martingale, and then from the mule rider's martingale, we're riding. So 4 to 6 hours a week, training 4 to 6 hours a week over a 6-month time frame. You got yourself
Awesome.
a good foundation.
Very good. Jerry's watching from Indiana, sunny and high of 49. Eileen is watching from cold and cloudy Nebraska. Scott is watching from South Carolina, sunny and 75. Judy says, I've heard of wet saddle blankets, but not a wet human butt. I must have been replying at some point in time to someone there when you were talking about that. Let's see here. Dory is watching from Virginia, windy and 50s. Happy Pants has the question, how do you fit yourself for a saddle? 16-inch, possibly a 17-inch.
Okay, so when I'm sitting in a saddle, never ever put your feet in the stirrups to see if it fits you. Because if you do, it's automatically going to kick you back 2 more inches than what you need to be. So when you climb in a saddle, sit in the saddle with your feet hanging and see how much room there is between the pommel and your thigh. Now this, folks, this is not a concrete, this is the only way it can be. It's a beginning way to measure. Some people like a tighter saddle fit. Other people like a looser saddle fit, okay? So it really depends on what your qualifications are. If it was me sitting in my saddle, no feet in the stirrups, I want 2 fingers between my thigh and the pommel. When I've got 2 fingers, that gives me a pretty good idea that I'm setting about the right size. Now, there are times that I may be riding kind of a bronky one, I'll put a set of bucking rolls on there so that I'm tightening that saddle. And then I'll also raise up my stirrups so that I'm not quite so long legged where I can bite a little bit more with my legs. So it really kind of depends on what I'm riding. But you tell me your height and weight. For instance, I'm 5'6" and I weigh 200 pounds, and I ride a 16-inch saddle. Of course, I've been riding 16-inch saddle for about 40 years too.
Hannah's watching from Florida. Judy says, I'm going through your saddle fit videos. Excellent. Kathy's watching from northern Idaho. Virginia says, hi, Steve and Dave. It's beautiful, warm in Santa Fe. Just tuned in. Eileen says, there was a discussion on a mule site the other day about contracted heels. Does it originate from genetics, poor trimming as a foal, too long in the toe? Should farriers keep the toes shorter as he balances the hoof?
Okay, so number one, how do we know what angle, i.e. longer toes, shorter toes, what angle, and heels too, what angle do we put the foot at? That angle is going to depend upon the mule. How on its shoulder, looking at the slope of his shoulder, how much of an angle is it on? That is how much I will take off on my heel or take off on my toe so that I can get the right angles. Now, I very seldom touch my heel, very seldom. I do most of my work on the toe and this sort of thing. So when it comes down to it, the contracted heel is a genetics, comes from the donkey. They got the worst hoof in the world, and so it's automatically at the quarters back are extremely soft, easy to crack, easy to break. That's why I only put 4 nails in my shoes, and that's all. So contracted heels is a bad thing because if you don't fix the contraction, you're going to have a small frog, and that frog pumps blood up and down the leg. And if you don't have a nice big fat healthy frog, you're not going to get the blood pumping up and down the leg, and you're going to end up with a crippled mule. So, and it's also, folks, just like you're fronting on your car, just like keeping air in your tires. You have to put shoes on to fix contraction. You have to. There's no other way to fix it, okay? Because of this. Here's the back of your hoof right here. All right, these are the hoofs. This one is tilted in like this. So what I have to do is put a shoe on it, and I take that shoe and I bend it a little bit so that it makes my hoof go down like this. And then the shoe can go off, and it'll make the hoof wider. So it's imperative that they have that contraction fixed.
Jim's watching from Alabama. Myra's watching. Cowboy Ken is watching. We've got Mr. 40, Grandpa Ted, and Gus from eastern Utah. Let's see. Bill is watching from southwest Ohio. Susan is watching from Wisconsin. Merlin from Minnesota. Judy says, I signed up for the Mule Clinic in Montana in June, and I haven't even gotten my mule yet. So excited about this. Love hearing that. That's going to be great. Hey, Yolanda is watching. I'm guessing from the Netherlands. That's taking us international. Let's see here. That is everything for today. Steve, thanks so much for taking time to hang out. Folks, thanks so much for hanging out with us and watching and chatting with us. Great show today, and looking forward to connecting with everybody in the next week. Steve, anything you want to say before we're done here?
Sir, happy trails. Dave, we'll see you when we see you.
Okay, sound good. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.